How's it going, guys? Coming back with another video here. A little bit of a double shot, 2 for Tuesday. So this one was pretty funny story. Couldn't help but talk about it here. At least some of you might find it funny. Anyways, there's been a lot of chat lately with regards to the Intellivision Amico and obviously Tommy Tallarico as well. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was saying, and I mean no disrespect, I was like, what has Tommy Tallarico done recently as far as video game music or scores are concerned? Because I really, in all honesty, you know, I feel like he hasn't done anything in years because he's been busy with his other business ventures, right? So I go on to Wikipedia. Now let me just backtrack a bit. As most of you know, my most favorite game of all time, or at least one of them, is Out of This World, which was named Another World over in other territories of the world. In the U.S., it was named Out of This World. And the reason for that was because around the same time when this game came out, there was a daytime soap opera on TV called Another World. So due to licensing and naming rights, they had to title the game Out of This World in the U.S. and Canada, the more you know. So anyhow, the game actually came out on the Atari ST and I think the Amiga back in 91. So it was out on those computers before it actually was ported to the Super NES and the Sega Genesis in 1992. Now, any of you out there that have played this game, if you've played it on the Super NES, you know that the soundtrack is completely different on that game. It was developed by someone else that didn't have ties to the original game, specifically for the Super NES. I think the guy's name was Jean-Francois Freitas. I could be wrong. So the game came out on the Super NES, and in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the soundtrack is absolutely incredible on the Super NES version of this game. It's better than the original soundtrack that was released for this game, and it really shows off the capabilities of the Super NES audio chip as well. So the Sega Genesis game runs a lot better than the Super NES version of this game. It's just a fact. Again, this game takes advantage of the processing power, at least at the time, of the Sega Genesis. The games actually play quite a bit differently on both consoles because I've played them both extensively, and I can tell you they're not identical. The Super NES version plays a lot easier, a lot more forgiving than the Sega Genesis version, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I own a copy of the Sega Genesis game, and the one Achilles heel, the one issue I have with it is the audio in the game is absolutely atrocious. It's terrible. It's exactly what people say when they say, you know, a developer that knows how to utilize the Sega Genesis sound chip can do incredible things with it. But when you get a port and it's a half-baked, you know, soundtrack that's sort of port. As an example, you see two games. One comes out on the Super NES and one's out on the Genesis. A lot of times you can tell, you know, the soundtrack on the Genesis is trying to mimic what was capable on the Super NES, but it just can't do it. And you end up with a flat-sounding game, flat sound effects, horrible audio. You know, there are a handful of really good games on the Genesis that took advantage of the chipset. Looking at Streets of Rage 2. But Another World on the Sega Genesis is not one of them. The soundtrack is so terrible in that version of the game. I would put up with the slow frame rates on the Super NES version just to be able to have that soundtrack. That's how good the soundtrack is on the Super NES port of this game. So let me go back to what I was saying with Tallarico. So I go onto Wikipedia and I go down to his discography and I'm looking at the games that he's done and I'm looking at them all. And yeah, of course, Prince of Persia, The Terminator. And what's wedged between Global Gladiators and Cool Spot? Another World. So apparently Tallarico had his hands in the cookie jar and he was meddling around with the soundtrack to my favorite game, a soundtrack that I cannot stand on the Sega Genesis version of this game, and come to find out, the musical genius himself, Tallarico, and he's done some great things. I don't think this is one of them. Could it be that Tallarico botched Another World on the Sega Genesis? I can't believe it. I don't know what exactly he contributed to this. I don't know. I'd like to hear his side of it. I'd like to think that maybe he really didn't have a lot of involvement, or maybe he was just, helping out with the sound effects. But even so, the sound effects are terrible. And so I go further on down his discography, and I see he had his hand in the cookie jar again. He worked on the sequel to Another World on the Sega CD, Heart of the Alien. And it says here he worked in conjunction with Jean-Francois. So I just can't believe it. I didn't know Tallarico had anything to do with Out of This World. And not only that, what the fuck did he do to my favorite game? Maybe this is just a black spot, a dark spot on his, stellar discography that he has. But I don't know, guys. I'd like to hear the real story on what Tallarico contributed to Another World. I didn't know he had anything to do with this game. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to let him explain his side of things. But if you don't believe me, go listen to the Super NES soundtrack for this game and the sound effects, and then listen to it on the Genesis. You'll know exactly what I mean. Who knows? Maybe Jean-Francois, he did such a good job with the Super NES soundtrack. Maybe he thought it was next to impossible to, pull out a miracle and reproduce this on the Genesis. And maybe that's why they had Tallarico, a young Tallarico, lending his hand to the soundtrack of Another World. So I don't know, guys. I thought it was pretty funny. Maybe we'll see this game on the Amico. Who knows? Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for now. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.